Nissan Motorsport don't really get out of bed very often to build a road car. They're not Nismo after all, Nissan road car. They're Nismo, Nissan Motorsport. And what motorsport means is winning races where there's a checkered flag. These Nismo guys, the best and brightest of Japan, end up working there, ladies and men, and they build epic stuff. Le Mans race cars, Super Taku touring cars, they're building no compromise epic stuff to win races, and that's cool. So yeah, there's no reason for them to build road cars, but occasionally Nismo do build a road car. The R34 Z-Tune is one such example. That car is steeped in heritage, everyone wants it, it's revered, it's sought after, it's worth millions of dollars. So yeah, if you do want a Nismo built road car, they cost 7 figures. But did you know they built a handful of other cars? And this is one here, the Nismo 380 RS, or RS380, whatever you want to call it. What is it? Well, it's essentially a 350Z that's a vessel for a racing car engine. That's right, guys. Nissan Motorsport, or Nismo, literally put a racing car engine in a road car and tried to sell 300 of them. How funny is that? They only sold 260 of them. This is one of 60 in black. It's a really, really rare car. But to be honest with you, I didn't know too much about this car or generally about it before it came in the shop. And I know you, behind the camera there, with your old logo Nismo hat and your Nismo oil cap worth 500 bucks on your bloody RB20 that won't pull the skin off a custard, I bet you don't know this car either, which is really quite funny because we know everything about Japanese cars, us Japanese car nerds, and there's still some that escape us. But there you go. So what are we going to do today, guys? Well, we're going to discuss this car. We're going to see if it's any good. We'll have a look at the bodywork and the aero. We'll open the bonnet and have a look at that 3.8 litre stroker. We'll sit in the car. I might lift it up on a hoist depending how low it is. It does look low and I don't want to hurt the car. But yeah, there you go. What we're going to do is pick this car apart and then finally take it for a drive to see if proof is in the pudding, to see if Nismo know what they're doing. So let's explore the Nismo 380 RS, guys. So the most important part about this car is this donk. And yes, what a donk it is. It is a 3.8 litre stroked version of the VQ35. And let's discuss sort of how this car came to be and why it exists. So back in the day, 2005, 2006, Nissan really wanted to see what this engine was capable of and wanted to enter it into motorsport. But as a 3.5, it's a bit of a nugget and needed more balls. They make a 4 litre version of this engine, which has a longer stroke and a slightly larger bore. But what the engineers did was they took the crankshaft out of the 4 litre, stuck it in a 3.5 with the same cylinder bore, and it resulted in 3.8 litres. But they didn't stop there. They made a version of that crankshaft in forged aluminium. They put forged rods, forged pistons, all this exotic hardware in the engine, and basically filled it with the motorsport goodies it always deserved. What they didn't carry over from the race car are things like the inlet manifold, the fueling, the ignition and the exhaust manifold, because that shit doesn't meet emissions. So essentially, it's about 70% of the racing car engine with the ancillaries missing from it. In full race trim, this engine made 297 kilowatts. In this trim, it makes 257 kilowatts. And that's 50 kilowatts less than the race car, but let me tell you, it feels like 100 kilowatts more than a regular 350Z. Like you start looking at these big ducts everywhere that they've done. I'm guessing maybe on the normal car or not, but they're huge and they are big. The airbox is laid out like the HR, so they're symmetrical. But yeah, you can sort of see on the outside it looks like a 350Z engine because it is, but on the inside is where this engine is really special. And when you turn it on, the noise it makes reflects that point. So yeah, pretty much racing car guts with bolt-ons from a regular car, making it legal on the road. What else is... Excuse me while I choke on my own saliva. What else is good about this car? Well, to be honest, it's got this wonderful plaque here, this really important build plaque. What it signifies is that this car was an Amori factory or Nismo built car. It's not a Nissan, it's a Nismo. The build plate says so. It says model Nismo 380 RS. So to me, it's a Nismo car. Now, they only tried to build about 300 of these cars and they only managed to sell 267 odd of them. They couldn't even sell them out when they were new because they're really expensive, and I guess not many people saw merit in it and they just wanted the GTR, and the rest is history. But that shows you that this car is actually rarer than we led on to believe. They built less of them than we thought. Of that 260 cars, only 60 were built in black. This is the second most uncommon color of the 3 they built. So it's quite a rare spec, this car. So yeah, if you think about how many were raced, how many were destroyed, how many have been used in motorsport, trying to find a good one's going to be really, really hard. They're actually non-existent now. They're really expensive in Japan. And you know what? We're trying to find out why that is, and we're probably going to find out when we drive it. But before we do that, let's try to put it up on the hoist to see what it's like. Now I say that because sometimes lifting cars on a hoist is not as simple as throwing 4 pads under it and lifting it. If you've got a car like this that's low, that's got lots of skirts on it, trying to find the jacking point can take you forever. Trying to set the bloody hoist up to not damage the car can take you 40 minutes. And we don't have the time to fuck around and do that. So we'll try our best to lift it up for you. Let's have a crack, guys.
What's going on, mate? I thought you said it was too hard.
Oh mate, it's just a fucking pain in the ass. Low cars, like just fucking kill me now, honestly. Why can't we lift 4-wheel drives all the time, man? It takes 2 minutes.
You getting it done?
Oh, a little bit, bit by bit. Right, I should stop whinging.
The career in automotive doesn't go to plan. You can be a yoga instructor, mate.
Oh yeah, a bit of downward dog while I put your crappy Nissan Z on the hoist. Since I've been whinging to you guys and Sal behind the camera about why it's annoying to lift a lowered car, I thought I'd show you why that is. So, for example here, I have these tough lift low jacking arms, which are really, really good for low cars, but they're not good for low cars that have deep seals like this. So basically, this car has this side skirt that's quite deep and sits quite low and sits proud of where you jack the car, right? So if you put the pad on at a reasonable height, this part of the hoist fouls on here and might crack or damage this. And we're talking about a mil or 2 difference, but to be fair, you don't want to hyperextend or put this higher than you have to, but you've got to have it at a right height where this doesn't foul. So to lift this car properly, and to lift it delicately, I should say, you just got to go around and make sure every pad is lifting it just off of here, but it hasn't hyperextended. So I'm a little bit fussy like that. I care about lifting cars on hoists and I want to do it properly and don't want to mark the car, but sometimes a lowered car can just be a f***ing ball ache. But bear with us, we'll have this car up in a couple of minutes. So what's different underneath about a Nismo 380 RS? Well, looking at the uprights and suspension is probably where the biggest difference is. This car has some very fancy Nissan suspension with some Nismo springs. This car has some aftermarket rose jointed upper control arms, so that's what's going on with the footwork. What else have we got? We've got a gearbox here, 6-speed manual, exactly the same ratios as a regular 350Z, sorry, no difference there at all. Got this awesome 2-into-1 part here, Nismo exhaust. It goes off the header, goes into 2, and sort of blends into 1. Got a resonator, it's kind of nice, why it sounds loud and cool. It's a very good looking exhaust that. What else we got? Diff here, LSD, Torsen, same ratio. It's factory, I believe it's 3.5 with the 6-speed. Some more fancy red suspension, some more adjustable SPL control arms here. But yeah, the rest of it underneath is very much like a regular 350Z. Not too much difference here. Same gearbox, same gearing, same diff ratio, upgraded suspension, sorry, and some uprights, and that's really about it under here, to be honest. This is a personal thing, and it means nothing. It doesn't change how the car drives, it doesn't change how the car's made, but it f***ing bothers me, right? Like, I look under every single car in this workshop, Hondas, Ferraris, Porsches, a whole lot, everything. And you look under a Honda, right, and the thing's built beautifully. It's like, oh, these bastards cared when they built it. They welded it nicely, they sanded every burr off, and they gave a shit about the car they built. Now, I love Nissan. I've owned heaps of Nissans. I'm a Nissan fanboy. I'm into Nissans, right? And I'll tell you this, Nissan are like hammers, right? They're big sledgehammers. They're big, bulky cars. They feel like they're uncouth. And you know what? You look underneath it, or it feels uncouth when you drive it, but you look underneath it and you get visual proof of how uncouth it is. Now, look at these welds here. Like, honestly, isn't she f***ing lovely? Stevie Wonder f***ing welded these, I reckon. You look at the quality of the weld and you're like, look, it does the job, right? It holds the subframe together. Don't get me wrong. And you're not going to look under a car and be like, ah, these welds are shit, I'm not going to buy it. No one does that. But if you're an anorak like me and you just care about detail that's under the surface, and you look at that and you're just like, honestly, like, this is why Honda are good. Don't get me wrong, I love my Nissans, but there are some build differences between the Nissan and other Japanese cars, just saying quietly. So what's the cabin like of the Nismo 380 RS? Well, as you'd expect, it's very much like a 350Z. Aside from some really gnarly red highlights here, the rest of the car is pretty much, as I said, like a 350Z. What do I love about this cabin? Well, firstly, I love how these gauges, they move with the wheel when you adjust it. How clever is that? I'm a lanky bloke, I've got long legs, and I'm forever adjusting steering wheels, and sometimes you end up with the steering wheel rim covering half the f***ing tacho, which is so stupid and ridiculous. So yeah, car brands can learn from that. Move the dials with the steering wheel, and the steering wheel won't block the dials. F***ing rocket science, there you go. What else is happening in this cabin? Well, we've got some very interesting indicator stalks here. I was looking at them before and they sort of look like ornate salt and pepper shakers, or the sort of indicator stalks that belong in Ioniq 5. They're really quite intricate and very 2005, but yeah, quite bizarre that, but there you go. Very interesting indicator stalks. What else we got? Some small cup holders, and what we have here as the most useless tray in the world. I'm not sure what you're going to put in there, maybe toothpicks, maybe some yen that we're not going to use, but yeah, there you go. There's a weird sort of tray there. Under here, more storage. Not sure what you're going to put there, maybe your wallet and phone, but there you go. So put your shit in the dash and off you go. Yeah, the rest of it's pretty standard. These seats are a little bit lackluster, to be honest. They're a bit flat at the bottom, they're a bit wide for me. Normally in Japanese cars, I'm forever trying to squish in them because they're quite narrow people, so their seats are often very supportive and narrow, but these feel very American and wide. I guess this is an American sort of car, or car that's based for the American market. So yeah, maybe that's why the seats are wider, but either way, they are a little bit wide for me and they do lack a bit of bolstering. But aside from that, it's a very nice cabin. I'm not sure how I feel about the red. I guess it might grow on me, but yeah, it's a bit colourful and a bit interesting. And the only other thing actually that's new on this car compared to a 350Z is that tacho, because it's got 5 magic letters on it. N-I-S-M-O, Nismo. There you go, guys. That's really what else is here, mate. Nothing else exciting, to be fair. It's pretty like, yeah. I never really liked the 350Z cabin when it was new, to be honest. I just thought it was a bit, you know, a bit boring, and like I don't understand this. Like, I don't know anyone that gets in a car and then puts their stuff in a compartment this big and then closes it and then drives. Like, you just don't do that. Like, you put your stuff in a door pocket, but this door pocket, you can't even get your hand in it. So that's probably why they put this big flap on the dash. But look, it just strikes me as an ergonomic afterthought. But yeah, this cabin never really enticed me. Like, it never really grabbed me. But look, this car's not about the cabin. This car's not about feeling comfortable. This car's not about, look at this wonderful interior. This car's about that racing car engine. So how about I shut up about my personal opinion about how I don't like this interior, and we go for a drive and see if I like the way it drives. How does that sound, Sal?
You might have something good to say.
Oh, maybe for once I might have some useful information for you.
We're so angry.
Today, it's Nissans, mate. Just Nissans and I. We don't get along. We almost didn't start this piece on our control road here because, as you can see, this car is really bumpy. It's definitely very firm. It still has a lot of suspension travel, but it's got really firm damping. It's pretty obvious it was damped for like track use and motorsport use, because yeah, out here on this road it is bloody bumpy. But hey, we thought we'd show you that because you can sort of see in here how bumpy it is, and we're honest people here at Colton Classic. But speaking of honesty, I'll mention something for a second. I mentioned back there that, you know, Nissan and I don't get along very well. Well, to be honest, if you get to know me, or you do know me, you know that I love Nissan. I've owned 30 of them. My first serious car I ever bought was an R34 Skyline. My first serious rear-wheel drive car I bought was an S13. I've owned 2 S14s. I've owned 2 S15s. I've owned a K11 Micra, an A31 Zafiro, an N14 Pulsar, my actual first car, and a couple of N15s too. So yeah, I do like Nissan, but they're just a little bit uncouth, and they're like a big hammer. They're not like a Honda that's a scalpel that's really finely distilled and epic. They're just a bit loose, but this one is quite tight, which I quite like. And what I do love about it is this engine. Let me bang it in a second and give you this up the hill. Get a listen to that, and hear it go. Oh my lord, it is fast, this car. And it really revs too. The engine feels tight as a drum. It feels like a motorsport grade engine. Who knew? Just because it is. But yeah, it feels really exotic. Currently I've got, speaking of other Nissans, I've got a V37 4-door Skyline as my daily driver at the moment. So I spend all day in this engine, or a similar engine, and this one definitely feels a bit more twinkly and a bit more bright. We're in our favourite piece of road here where we can give it a good old fang. Let's move this carpet. This boot carpet's just gone astray, which is a bit strange, but yeah, we can give the car a bit of a fang up this road here because it's a high speed limit, and you can really see what the engine can do from first, second to third. Just give it a bit of a poke. What an engine. It's fast, definitely fast, but it just keeps on going. It crescendos and then it surges and it doesn't drop off. Some V6s, or most V6s I've driven, are a little bit dopey. They're like, oh, get to 3,000 RPM and that's it, mate. I've got nothing more for you. Whereas this one, you get above 4,000 RPM, it's like tickling my balls. Let's keep going. You get it to 6,000 RPM and it's like, just keeps flapping me. And you get up to the red line, you grab the next gear and it's all on again. It loves it, to be honest. It really does love a good old caning, this car, and that's what this engine's about. It's a racing engine. It's designed to be revved. It's built to be revved. It's balanced, it's hand weighted, all that crap that they speak about. They get the little scales out and they well, every little conrod and link them all together and match pairs and whatever the hell they want to do. Practice black magic, whatever those racing car drivers do. Racing car engine builders, sorry, they do make an engine that feels very twinkly, feels very bright. I spent a lot of time in cars like Porsches, Ferraris, McLarens, all that sort of stuff, and they've got that semblance of that too. They've sort of got that exotic feel to the driveline, and I feel like you get a slice of that here, which is really nice considering it doesn't cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. This car costs $130,000, but other things, steering, it's quite nice too. It weights up really well, feels direct, which I like. Even for a Nissan, it feels very sharp. But yeah, speaking of the chassis, we were mentioning before that it's quite firm and unrelenting, and yeah, that's not very common for a Nissan. I find them to be a bit rubbery around all the joints and bushes, and they need a bit of a massage with some good coilovers and some adjustable arms to get the most out of them. But this one feels pretty good out of the box. Yes, it does have some adjustable arms and a couple of rose joints, but the majority of the car is standard. And me personally, thinking about it, who was driving an R34 GTR not that long ago, this is much sharper and much more exciting than a car like that. Unless you spend $1 billion on it and empties your wallet and you get divorced and you make a really fast one with GTRs, that's what you got to do. But out of the box, they're a bit crap. This out of the box is exciting, it's really good. And the engine is really bright too, but what we're going to do now is we'll go over to an area where there's some faster roads and places where we can thread the car, and yeah, we'll come back to you in a quick second. Alright, we've arrived at that road I mentioned earlier where we can go a bit faster and we can go through some hills. Alright, let's get up this thing and see what it does. The engine's just... yeah, the engine's exceptional in this car. I really quite like it. There is a bit of roll in it actually, surprisingly. I did spend a bit of time in this car driving it around, but I didn't notice that. Yeah, it feels a little bit rolly, which is quite strange, but it's Nissan being Nissan. Oh, the engine is the star. Really, you're here because of that powertrain. I love the way it revs. I love the way it builds power. I love the way it just keeps saying, come on, just keep tickling me and keep giving me a bit of a spank and I want a bit more, and it just loves it. It really loves being under load and it sounds incredible. Yeah, this is a really awesome GT car, this. We speak about cars in use case point. Now, you buy a Cayman, you buy an Alpine A110, or heaven forbid, you buy that junk Alpha 4C, and then you try and use the thing and you're like, on the road it's a bit noisy, as in terms of like just NVH, and maybe it's not the best. It's good on a track, but it's not good out here. A car like this, it's probably good on a track. I want to drive it on a track and tell you, haven't done that yet, but out here it feels really right. It feels nice. There's a bit of wobble in the car that I mentioned, but it feels tight. And yeah, just the way the powertrain feels, the way it's geared, it's sort of geared where you just want to get on the road like this and just do that. Oh, just do that. Keep accelerating, grab next gear, keep accelerating, turn it through the corners. It's a really sort of evocative powertrain. It's like a sort of GT car, I guess. It's got that semblance to it, which I quite like. But you can see there's a bit of up and down movement in the thing. That's that suspension travel we mentioned earlier, but the high speed ride you notice it more because obviously there's more load and inertia on the car. At low speed it feels really firm, but it's kind of interesting there. I wonder what the sort of feeling is there. Maybe they designed it to pump ripple strips or something, they gave it lots of travel, I don't know, but yeah, it's sort of an interesting sensation when it goes fast. It sort of moves around a bit. As I mentioned earlier, I did spend a bit of time in it, and yes, if you just be a hooligan with it and kick the clutch and try and make it oversteer, you probably can do that, but that's not what this car's about. This car's about having a lot of mechanical grip. It's about finding some nice corners like this one and just threading them through at a good pace, on the throttle a bit, and enjoying the roll on out of it. Back on the brakes again, just put it through this one. Yeah, it's a bit of a corner car though, in the sense that you want to take it on a good road trip. It's a really, really nice road car. And if you're buying a toy for the road, where you're going to spend 80% of it on the road and 20% on the track, a car like this makes so much sense. It really, really does. And then you sprinkle on top the fact it's incredibly rare. The fact it's made by the same people who build $1 million GTRs. And then it's got all of that Japanese motorsport heritage just dotted all over it, packaged up with that racing car engine, and you do sort of get a car that really has a unique flavour to it. And yeah, I kind of can't like it, but what I want to do now is bang it down a gear, maybe one more gear, just give it another. spent a lot of time in this car just finding roads and beating them up, which is sort of what you want in a road car. So yeah, gotta say, this one's a bit surprising. The suspension tune's probably not for me, but the rest of the car is firm, exciting, and that power tray is something you're gonna never get bored of, and you're just gonna wanna just be up it all day. And bit of a license threat, this car. It damages your points, you know. It's the sort of thing you look at it, you're like, for your license getting warm, going, oh, I'm gonna lose a few points when I go out in it, but it's worth it. And yeah, it's definitely that sort of car. Looks special, sounds special, got a heart of gold, drives pretty good too. So what I reckon on the road is, yeah, it's better than I thought it would be, to be honest. And it's definitely very exciting. What an exciting car this thing is. I'm quite amazed that this car has avoided the radars of every Japanese car enthusiast, but it's probably a good thing because its value is still in check. It's still definitely value for money when you're looking at its price point, around $130,000, and what it offers you in terms of how it looks and how it drives. That's the most critical thing with this car. Yes, you can stand next to it at Castle Coffee like this and be a poser, but most importantly, when you hit the road on it on the way home, you're going to be absolutely elated with how it is to drive. At the end of the day, it's a road car, and you look at, I don't know, a Cayman S or an Alpine A110, which you also buy for similar money, and this thing's a little bit more exotic, and it's got a bit more flavour to it, which I really appreciate. And best of all, that engine is an absolute star, and that car is just a vessel for you to have a motorsport grade engine in a road registered car. That is enough of a reason to buy this thing. And just to prove that point, we're going to give you a nice little morsel at the end to enjoy on your way out. Thanks for watching, guys.